Hello everybody, my name is OKTAR BABUNA. I'm a medical doctor, a brain surgeon from Turkey. I will speak on behalf of Harun Yahya. Harun Yahya is a Muslim intellectual, an Islamic scholar from Turkey who has written more than 250 books. Some of them are faith-related, some of them are science-related, some of them are related to politics. Harun Yahya gives a lot of importance to Darwinism, the theory of evolution, for several reasons. I will go into detail. Today's topic, is a very important topic, the collapse of the theory of evolution and the fact of creation. The theory of evolution is not only a scientific issue, it has social implications. It was applied into social sciences. It has been so-called scientific support of atheism and materialist philosophy, which deny the existence of a creator, and it's applied into societies, and it has been the ideological foundation of the many perverted ideologies of the 20th century. I would like to start with Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins from Oxford University, from United Kingdom, is the most prominent evolutionist and also militant atheist. Dawkins says, before Darwin, it was difficult to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist, and Darwin made it easy to become an intellectual atheist. That's the reason why Darwinism is so important, because it has been the so-called scientific support of atheism with materialist philosophy. As you know, materialist philosophy claims that the matter exists forever and will exist for forever. And the Darwinism, the theory of evolution, has been the so-called scientific support of this materialist philosophy. It is application of the materialist philosophy into biology. Well, the theory of evolution, Darwinism, was applied into social sciences, and it has been applied into societies, into individual life, under the name of social Darwinism. What is social Darwinism? Social Darwinism is the adaptation of the law of the jungle to human behavior. Basically, the main concepts of the theory of evolution: struggle for survival, survival of the fittest, the weak, strong ones survive, and the weak ones get eliminated. And there's a constant conflict in the nature. These concepts were applied into social sciences starting in the middle of the 19th century. For example, Sigmund Freud applied into psychology, Karl Marx into history, Durkheim into sociology. Well, Herbert Spencer, he is the main theorist of social Darwinism. Spencer said, if they are sufficiently complete to live, they do live, and it is well they should live. If they are not sufficiently complete to live, they die, and it is best they should die. Spencer is talking about human beings. He says, incomplete human beings, for example, handicapped people, weak or sick individuals, should die for others to live. And this is the basic concept of the social Darwinism. Stephen Jay Gould, he is a very famous, is the most prominent paleontologist. Paleontologist means the fossil scientist of the 20th century. He's a Harvard paleontologist. He makes his comment on the issue. Subsequent arguments for slavery, colonialism, racial differences, class struggles, and sex roles would go for primarily under the banner of the science. But the scientific cover, the basic concepts of Darwinism was applied into many isms, has been the ideological foundation of the many isms of the 20th century. For example, Hitler's deviation of building a master race. Marx claimed that the history of mankind is the history of class struggle, and the capitalism's provision for the strong growing even stronger at the expense of the weak. The struggle concept of Darwinism was taken from the theory of evolution and applied, for example, in the communism, there's a struggle between classes. In imperialism, there's a struggle between states. And in the capitalism, there's a struggle between individuals. In the fascism and racism, there's a struggle between races. And the result, a lot of millions of people were slaughtered in this 20th century because of these perverted ideologies. Communism, for example. Karl Marx, the founder of the communism, in one of his letters he wrote to Engels, he said, for Charles Darwin's book, The Origin of Species, this is the book which contains the basis in natural history for our review. In another letter, Karl Marx said, Darwin's book is very important and serves me as a basis in natural science for the class struggle in history. So basically, the concepts of the Darwinism has been the basic tenets of the communism. They were applied by Karl Marx into communism. I would like to start with Stalin. Stalin is one of the most prominent communist dictators of the 20th century. Stalin said in one of his books, there are 3 things that we do to disabuse the minds of our seminary students. They had to teach them the age of the earth, the geologic origin, and the Darwin's teachings. Yes, Stalin taught Darwin's teachings in the communist Russia during this dictatorship. And there were like more than 20 million people were slaughtered during the dictatorship of the Stalin. He's one of the bloodiest dictators of the entire human history. Or Trotsky, for example. Again, a very prominent communist leader. He said, Darwin's discovery is the highest triumph of the dialectic in the whole field of organic matter. Or Mao, in one of his speeches, he said, Chinese socialism is founded upon Darwin and the theory of evolution. Yes, Chinese socialism is founded upon the theory of evolution, Darwinism, and during Mao's time, there were more than 60 million people who were slaughtered in the communist Russia. Basically, more than 120 million people were killed in the communist regimes throughout the world, because Darwinism has been the so-called scientific support of this communist ideology, and more than 120 million people were killed because of this herd ideology in the world. What about fascism? The fruit of the law of the jungle. Charles Darwin, in his famous book, The Origin of Species, he said, the famous book, The Descent of Man, he said, at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. At the same time, the anthropomorphous apes will no doubt be exterminated. The break between man and his nearest allies will then be wider, for it will intervene between man in a more civilized state, as we may hope, even then the Caucasian and the some ape as low as the baboon, instead of as now between the Negro or Australian and the gorilla. Basically, Charles Darwin, he was a racist, and he believed there are more superior races, which are more evolved animals, and will exterminate the lower races, for example, black people or Australian and other Orientals, will exterminate these lower races, which are close to monkeys. And these ideas were taken by Adolf Hitler and Alfred Rosenberg, the main theorist of fascism, and it was applied into fascist ideology. Adolf Hitler, in his famous book, Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf means my struggle, my fight. So basically, this struggle concept were taken from Darwinism. And Adolf Hitler used Darwinism as the so-called scientific justification of the fascist Nazi ideology. He said, a higher race subjects to itself a lower race, a right which we see in nature and which can be regarded as the sole conceivable right. So if you read his book, Mein Kampf, you go over many times the same concepts of Darwinism, struggle for survival, survival of the fittest, the strong ones should survive, and the weak ones should get eliminated. And there's a constant conflict in the society, in the nature, and these ideas were taken by Adolf Hitler and applied into fascism. Hitler goes on, the Jews formed as a subhuman counter-race, predestined by their biological heritage to evil, just as the Nordic race was designated for nobility. History would culminate in a new millennial empire of unparalleled splendor, based on a new racial hierarchy ordained by nature herself. Hitler goes on, the whole world of nature is a mighty struggle between strength and weakness, and an eternal victory of the strong over the weak. There would be nothing but decay in the whole of nature if this were not so. He who would live must fight. He who does not wish to fight in this world, where permanent struggle is the law of life, has not the right to exist. To think otherwise is to insult nature. Distress, misery, and disease are her rejoinders. So basically, because of these Darwinist ideas, Darwinist concepts, which were applied by Adolf Hitler into bloody ideology Nazism, more than 55 million people were killed, as you know.